Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you are tuning in right now, you are probably what we like to call the learner. You're the kind of person who doesn't just read the book. You want to know how the ink got on the page. You want to see the machinery behind the curtain.
You're not just satisfied with the what, you're always chasing the why.
Exactly. And usually when we chase that why, we end up in some pretty abstract places. Quantum mechanics, deep philosophy.
The nature of consciousness, things like that. Big, big topics.
Right. But today we're going to find the secrets of the universe in, of all places, a little tin box of old buttons.
It's an amazing pivot, isn't it? We're going from the macro to the extremely micro.
We're talking about squirrels. We're talking about cigar smoke. We are digging into family gossip from, 60 years ago?
And somehow it's all connected. The gossip, the buttons, it all ends up explaining these huge metaphysical concepts, like the physics of hate.
And the biology of love. It sounds like a strange mix, but that's really the magic of the source material we're looking at today.
It is. It connects the mundane to the magnificent.
So let's set the stage. We are cracking open the archives of the Seth material.
And specifically, for those following along, we are in session 176 of the early sessions, book 4.
This is a really great era of the material, I think. The voice is so fresh, and the concepts are just starting to lock into place.
It's foundational stuff, and to get the full picture, you have to know when this was happening.
Right. The date of record is August 9th, 1965.
1965. So you have to picture what's going on in the world, but more importantly, what's going on in the room where this is being recorded.
Yes. Okay, so the scene is, it's a Monday night. It's a 9:00 p.m. in Elmira, New York.
Yeah.
And the mood is, well, it's a little spooky, but in a very cozy domestic way.
That's a good way to put it, because Robert Butts, who's taking the notes, and his wife Jane Roberts, the medium, they've just come back from a funeral.
That's the key piece of context. It's Robert's Aunt Ella, who passed away the day before. She was 88.
So the room is heavy. It's filled with that very specific kind of quiet exhaustion you only get after a funeral.
The grief, the family stuff you have to deal with, the reflection on a long life, all of that is just hanging in the air.
They're sitting in their back room. Jane goes into a trance. Her voice deepens, and the entity Seth comes through.
But, and this is what I love about this session, he doesn't start with a big sermon. He doesn't give them a generic, she's in a better place kind of speech.
No, not at all. He does something far more interesting. He launches straight into a character study, a kind of psycho-spiritual autopsy of Aunt Ella.
Yes. He looks at her life, her quirks, her hoarding, and he just breaks it down like a mechanic looking at an engine.
And he starts with her name. Her entity name, which she says is Dorinella.
Which is really quite beautiful, isn't it?
It is. And then he drops this little reincarnation tidbit right at the start. He says she's had 4 previous lives.
And in one of them, she was the beloved wife of Robert's Uncle Jay.
Which is fascinating because in this life, she was married to Uncle Wilbur, but she always had this incredibly close, almost psychic bond with Uncle Jay.
It just reinforces that whole idea of soul groups, doesn't it? The same cast of characters just swapping roles in different plays.
Exactly. But Seth doesn't really dwell on the past lives. He's interested in who Ella was in this life.
And he uses one word to describe her that I think we really need to unpack. He calls her aloof.
Aloof. Now, normally that word sounds a bit arrogant or cold.
Right. You think of someone who thinks they're better than everyone else.
But that's not how Seth is using it. He's using it almost like a clinical diagnosis. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that her personality was never fully centered in physical reality.
Never entirely centered. That's such a specific way to put it. It's like she was always hovering a few inches off the ground.
Precisely. He says she saw the world as soiled.
Soiled. Wow, that's a strong word.
It implies contamination. She had this deep, visceral reaction against violence, the noise of the world, the aggression, the chaos. It was just too much for her.
So she developed a coping mechanism.
She just opted out. She built herself a bubble.
And she wasn't alone in that bubble, was she? She had her husband, Uncle Wilbur.
Uncle Wilbur. Robert's notes give us such a great little sketch of him. A gentleman, a tailor. Smoked these strong cigars.
I can just picture him, the vest, the gravelly voice. But Seth's description of their marriage it's hilarious, but it's also deeply profound.
He says they were both kind, they loved nature, but
they were hoarders.
Yes. And the analogy he uses is just brilliant. He says, they both dug in like squirrels and hid.
The image is just, it's perfect. You can see this elderly couple literally burrowing into their own home, stacking things up around them, peeking out from behind the curtains.
Hiding from the big, scary world. And he says they didn't just hoard things, he says they hoarded each other.
That phrase just stopped me cold. Hoarding each other. What does that even mean in a relationship?
I think it means a totally closed loop. It's you and me against the world. We are safe in here together, and we are not letting any of the outside mess in.
It's a defensive posture. It's safe, I guess, but it's also incredibly stagnant.
Very. And Seth points out that Ella had a kind of vanity about it, a spiritual pride. She felt she was superior because she couldn't handle the violence of the world.
Ah, the old, I'm just too sensitive for this cruel world defense.
Exactly. She framed her fear as a virtue. The world is evil, so I'm righteous for staying away from it.
But this is where the session turns and where we get to the part that really gave me the chills.
The buttons.
The buttons. It's the centerpiece of the whole thing.
It really is.
So, Robert mentions in his notes that he had completely forgotten about this, but his Aunt Ella collected buttons.
She had an old red tin box filled with buttons, string, bits of paper, the usual stuff you'd find.
Right. My grandmother had a button jar. It's a practical thing, but this is not practical.
No, this is mystical. Seth explains that for Ella, these buttons weren't just little pieces of plastic or bone. He says, to her, the buttons almost seem to have consciousness.
Consciousness. In a shirt button.
It sounds totally bizarre until you understand the mechanism behind it. What we're really talking about here is psychometry.
Okay, let's define that for anyone listening who might not be familiar.
Psychometry is the idea that objects can absorb and hold the energy, the memories, the emotional residue of the people who've handled them. It's the theory that matter can record experience.
So Ella is sitting there in her cluttered house, holding a button.
And she's not just looking at it, she is time traveling. Seth says she would sit there, hold a button, and she would remember the dress it came from when she wore it, and, this is the amazing detail, how the weather had been.
How the weather had been. That detail just kills me. She's not just remembering an event, she's feeling the humidity of a summer day in 1922.
Seth says she lived in a present that was deeply colored by the past. The buttons were her anchors. If the present moment felt too scary, too soiled, she could grab a button and pull herself back to a memory where she felt safe.
It's a form of escapism, but through haberdashery. It's incredible.
It is. And the picture Seth paints of Uncle Wilbur watching this, it's a perfect little tragicomic.
Or Wilbur.
Seth says Wilbur would just eye her while she did this. He resented it. Can you imagine? He's sitting there, smoking his cigar, watching his wife just zone out, completely lost in a trance, over a toggle from an old coat.
But he couldn't really say anything, could he?
He was trapped. Because she had his buttons, too. She'd hold one up from one of his old suits and say, "Do you remember this suit, Wilbur? Do you remember where we were?"
Oh, man. So she'd drag him back into the memory with her.
She'd force him to time travel with her. And Seth makes this really sharp point about Wilbur. He was a tailor. He worked with buttons and cloth his whole life, but he was also terrified of the world.
So while Ella went silent and deep into the buttons,
Wilbur chattered, again like a squirrel.
One digs in silently, the other chatters nervously around the edges. But they're both hiding.
Both squirrels in the same burrow.
It's funny, but it's also so sad. And Seth says that the rest of the family, they never forgave them for living that way.
And we have to get to that family feud because it's so revealing. But first, there's a much heavier piece of this puzzle we need to look at.
Right.
Because Ella didn't just have a box of buttons, she had a son.
A son named Jay.
And we have to be really mindful of the language here because this is 1965. The notes describe him as retarded and living in an institution.
Right. And normally our modern perspective on that is it's a tragedy. It's a genetic misfortune. It's just terrible luck.
We see it as a biological error, a mistake.
But Seth comes in and completely reframes the entire situation. And honestly, this is the most chilling part of the whole session for me. He argues it wasn't a mistake, it was a construction.
It's a radical, radical idea. He links the son's condition directly back to Ella's intense fear of the world. Remember, she saw the world as violent and soiled.
She didn't want to participate in it.
And she didn't want her child to have to participate in it either. Seth says her creative energies, her intent, was not directed toward forming a normal child who would have to grow up and face war and heartbreak and all the pain of adult life.
So instead,
Yeah.
she produced a child who would never have to fully enter that world. A child who would be protected from it.
Seth says she produced a human being who would remain in a sort of summer garden.
That phrase, a summer garden.
It's haunting, isn't it? The full quote is so powerful. He says, she considered that she had indeed produced a human being who would remain in a sort of summer garden, secure from deep hurts and vain regret.
Secure from vain regret. Think about that for a second. If you remain in a state of mental childhood, you never have to look back on your life with regret. You never have to feel like you fail.
You're protected from all of it. Seth actually calls the son supremely invulnerable. By staying in the garden, he avoids the winter of adulthood completely.
Hang on, this feels like we're blaming the mother. It sounds like she was scared, so she caused her son's disability. That feels really heavy and unfair.
And Seth anticipates that objection. He addresses it immediately. He says it wasn't just Ella's choice. He says, you must also realize that the entity who became her son also chose the circumstances, knowing of them in advance, for his own purposes.
So the son's soul was in on it. It was an agreement.
A joint energy gestalt, as he calls it, a pre-life contract. The son's soul basically said, you know what? For this incarnation, I'm going to take a pass on the heavy lifting. I'll stay in the garden, I'll provide this experience for my mother, and I'll have a gentle, protected existence.
That just turns our entire concept of victimhood on its head. We see someone in that state and we feel pity. Seth sees a soul who made a strategic choice for a particular kind of life.
And he even says that on some level, Ella was jealous of her son. She wished she could be in that dreamlike state, so she made sure his escape from the world was more complete than her own.
Wow. I can't fully escape, but I can make damn sure you never have to enter. That is, it's a kind of love, but it's a fierce and almost terrifyingly protective love.
It's protective love taken to its absolute metaphysical conclusion.
Okay, so we have the squirrels in the burrow, the sun in the summer garden. Now let's talk about the people standing outside looking in, the rest of the family.
Yes, specifically Robert's parents. This is where I get into the family dynamics and what Seth calls the freedom gene.
Right, so Robert's mother, who was Jane's mother-in-law, apparently hated Ella and Wilbur. She couldn't stand them.
She would visit their house, see the stacks of newspapers, the clutter, the button box, this whole squirrel life they had built, and she was just disgusted by it.
She saw it as squalor. Seth says she'd think to herself, is this squalor what he wanted? And the he she's talking about is her own husband, Robert's father.
Because deep down, she had this nagging suspicion that her husband was secretly jealous of them.
He envied their freedom.
Exactly. Seth paints a picture of Robert's father as this deeply conflicted man. He calls him a great pretender.
That's a sharp label.
Well, he says that on the surface, Robert's father was a dude and a braggart. He wanted to be a man of the world. He married Robert's mother because she wanted to be a grand lady. They had this shared dream of success, money, status.
The American dream, 1940s style.
Right. But underneath it all, that wasn't his true nature. He had what Seth calls a secret itch, a desire for freedom from all those worldly concerns. He wanted what Ella had.
The ability to just not care, to be eccentric, to follow your own quiet path.
But he wasn't willing to pay the price for it.
And what was the price?
In our society, the price for that kind of freedom is often poverty or being seen as an oddball. Ella and Wilbur paid that price. They lived in what others saw as squalor, but they were free. Robert's father wanted the freedom, but he also wanted the fancy car and the respect of the neighbors.
You wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
And he ended up with neither. He was stuck in the middle, and his wife felt betrayed. She signed up to marry the aspiring tycoon, and she slowly realized she was married to a man who secretly wanted to be a squirrel.
That is a hilarious way to put it, but it's true. She felt like he'd pulled a bait and switch on her.
And Seth makes this brilliant distinction here that I think is so useful for everyone. He talks about the difference between freedom from and freedom for.
Let's unpack that.
He says it's a family trait, especially on the father's side. The men in this family seek freedom from. They want to escape, get away from responsibility, away from worries, away from the demands of the world.
He gives examples, right? The other brothers.
Yes. One of them escapes into his model trains. Another escapes into golf. He says these outlets are extremely necessary for them. They're hiding places.
Just like Ella's buttons. You go down to the basement and tinker with your trains, and you're in a little miniature world where you're in complete control.
Exactly. That's freedom from. But freedom for is something else entirely. It means you use your liberty not just to run away, but to run towards something, to build something, to create.
And Seth suggests that Robert, by doing this very work, by recording these sessions, is the one who managed to channel that family trait into freedom for.
Yes. He's using his solitude and his focus not just to hide, but to explore the very nature of reality. He's using his freedom for expansion, not just for escape from annoyance.
That is a question we could all ask ourselves, couldn't we? When you're scrolling on your phone for 3 hours, is that freedom from or freedom for?
I think we all know the answer to that one. It's usually freedom from. We're just digitally collecting buttons.
Guilty. Oh, wait, let's pivot. Let's talk about the other woman whose presence is felt in this session. Jane Roberts herself, the channel.
Rubert, as Seth calls her.
The session takes a turn to talk about Jane's relationship with her own mother. And, yikes, if Aunt Ella was a squirrel, Jane's mother sounds like a thunderstorm.
It's not a healthy dynamic. Seth is very direct. He says Jane's mother has a deep rage inside her, and a lot of that rage is pointed, consciously or not, at Jane.
And Robert, the husband, is understandably worried. He asks Seth, is this dangerous? Can my mother-in-law's hatred actually hurt Jane?
It's a really practical question if you believe that thoughts have energy. Can someone else's focused negativity make you sick or cause you harm?
And Seth responds with this chilling law of the universe. He just states it as fact. Like attracts like.
It's the law of attraction, but explained as a hard science. He says, if you hate, you will be hated. You will attract hate. It's a frequency thing.
But then he says Jane is perfectly safe, so why doesn't the rule apply to her?
Because, he says, Jane is constitutionally incapable of deliberate harm. Her own nature is her protection. He says, Rupert's love for you, his ability to love in general, is his protection.
So this is where it gets into the physics of it. This isn't just a sweet platitude, oh, be a nice person. Seth is describing love as a literal shield.
He is, and the quote is so important, I want to get it right. He says, love is always a protection in a quite literal manner, in a biological and electromagnetic and chemical and psychic manner.
Biological, electromagnetic, and chemical. That's not poetry. That sounds like a spec sheet for a force field.
That's exactly what it is. It implies that the emotion of love changes your actual energy field, your frequency. So if you're vibrating at the frequency of love and compassion, the frequency of violence literally can't find you. It has nothing to lock onto.
So if Jane hated her mother back, if she met that rage with her own rage, she'd be lowering her shield.
She'd be opening a door. She'd be creating a receptor site for that negative energy. Because she can't and won't do deliberate harm, her mother's rage it glances off. It has no landing pad.
So being a good person isn't just a moral choice. It's a survival strategy.
It is the most pragmatic spiritual defense system there is. If you don't want to get hit, don't broadcast on the getting hit frequency.
Efficient love. I like the sound of that. Okay, so we've covered the past with Ella, the present with the family drama. Let's end with this very weird, very trippy thing Robert was experiencing, this psychic expansion.
Right, this is the final piece of the session, and it gets a little mind-bending.
Robert had been feeling this strange sensation of physical enlargement, as if he was getting bigger than his own body.
I've heard this described by people in deep meditation, a sense of your boundaries dissolving and expanding.
And Seth confirms it. He says that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
The self would expand. It's the inner self trying to push past the physical container.
But why? What's the point of that? Why would you want to feel like a giant balloon?
Seth ties it directly back to all the family pain we've just been discussing.
He tells Robert that if he could learn to control this expansion, he could absorb your own awareness of their sometimes painful existence, and you would feel no wound yourself.
Okay, wait. Unpack that. That's a huge concept.
Okay. So normally when we see people we love in pain, when Robert sees the tragedy of his parents' marriage or the squalor of Aunt Ella's life, our instinct is to contract, to cringe. We feel hurt for them and by them. We get small to protect ourselves.
We dig in. We become squirrels.
Exactly. But Seth is proposing the opposite strategy. Don't get smaller, get bigger. If you can become psychically vast enough, you can hold all of their pain and all of their tragedy inside your field of awareness without it harming you.
It's the difference between being a teacup and being an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
A drop of poison in a teacup ruins the whole thing. A drop of poison in the ocean just vanishes.
That's a perfect analogy. You become big enough to contain the pain without being defined by it. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Seth warns him, you can't do this until you lose the fear of self-destruction. Because the ego is terrified of that kind of expansion. The ego thinks, if I get that big, I'll pop, I'll dissolve, I won't be me anymore.
So the ultimate goal is to become so vast that you can hold everyone else's suffering with compassion without it destroying you.
And that, Seth says, is a development that can't be rushed. You have to gently teach the ego that it's safe to be infinite.
Man. So from hoarding buttons in a dusty tin box to becoming a psychic giant who can metabolize pain, This one session covers the entire spectrum of human consciousness.
It really does. It shows you that every tiny little habit, the button box, the model trains, it's all a clue. It's a symptom of a much deeper spiritual choice we're all making every single day.
Are we hiding or are we expanding?
Are we building a summer garden to hide from the winter, or are we learning to embrace all the seasons?
That's the real question. Well, I know I'm going to be looking at my own clutter a little differently after this, my own little hoard of buttons.
Or at least asking why you're keeping them. What past weather are you trying to recreate?
That is a fantastic question. Well, learner, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. It has been quite a journey.
A truly fascinating one.
And we want to remind all of you that this whole conversation was based on the Seth material, specifically session 176 of the Early Sessions Book 4.
Yes, and we absolutely have to credit the publisher New Awareness Network. They're the guardians of this incredible body of work.
If anything we talked about today sparked something in you, if you want to read the session for yourself, and there's so much more nuance in the original text, we really strongly encourage you to study the Seth material books directly.
You can find them and support the publisher by going to sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
There's really no substitute for reading the source material. We can give you the map, but you have to walk the territory for yourself.
Absolutely.
And just a quick disclaimer, this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We're just here to explore the ideas.
And start the conversation.
So until next time, stay curious, keep expanding, and maybe take a look inside your own button box.
And ask yourself if you're seeking freedom from or freedom for.
Ooh, that's a good one to end on. We'll see you next time, learner.